Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. So I have my beautiful friend Barry Littleton here. So Barry and I go back to I think 2014 now. We've known each other for a couple of years, and the reason that I asked you on is not just because you're one of my friends, but because out of all the ET contactees and experiences and presenters that I've seen present, your stuff blows me away more than anyone else that I've ever seen. So I do want to have you back on to talk about the fun ET stuff and contact. And I mean, your amount of knowledge when we talk about propulsion systems and quantum physics and craft and things, it just blows my mind. But
Thank
today
you very much.
you're so welcome. Today we're here to talk about spirit attachment and negative entities. So I'm just going to read your bio. So we've got Barry Littleton. Barry Littleton was born awake with fragmented past life memories. He began having paranormal experiences at a very young age. These experiences included telepathic awareness, seeing or feeling ghosts, various inorganic beings. These encounters and some of the entities themselves had a distant extraterrestrial origin. This led him to a lifetime of research and exploration in both the metaphysical and paranormal fields. So, Mr. Littleton majored in psychology, sociology, and ethnic studies from Wichita State University. From the last 22 years, you've worked with at risk youth, juvenile offenders, utilizing the cognitive behavioral approach. So, in 2010, Mr. Littleton had a tragic car accident resulting in 4 catastrophic traumatic brain injuries, known as TBI, along with near death experiences, known as NDE. The event was life changing. It was predicted that your condition would remain in a near vegetable state. Surviving the catastrophic event with mental faculties intact spurred Barry on to come forward to contact paranormal experiences. We're so lucky that you've come out about them too. So it says that you hope to unite extraterrestrial contactees with similar encounters, interests, and cross the racial color barrier that exists within the field. Since coming forward, he has had the pleasure to meet awakened people from across the globe, which has been an amazing experience. And then it says that your website's under construction, but I do have for Facebook and YouTube dropped in as well. So you can also be reached on barrylittleton13@gmail.com. And I'm just going to jump back to my other window. Yeah, so welcome to the show, and thank you so much for coming on. And did that kind of cover most of the things in the intro?
Yeah, quite accurately. Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey from the beginning of here. Just the point that I never thought I'd still be talking to people about this or dealing with this. And I thought I would get out of it by now, but spirit sees things different. You know what I mean? So
isn't it funny?
yeah,
You're definitely meant to be doing what you're doing.
Yeah, it's a blessing. It's good to talk to you again. Also, it's been a while, so it looks like everything's going good, and I have much appreciation for that. It's a time where the planet is in need of this type of work. I mean, it's getting really, really serious here. It's no longer just playtime and just time to sit on the fence. It's really time to kind of back things up through the realm of action. That's really what this is. Not just theory, not just reading stuff in books. It's time for action, taking it into that realm. And that's what we'll be talking about tonight a little bit, I think. So that's cool.
Yeah, and that's why I thought, the topic, and I saw that you and Alexis Burke have your workshop on for the weekend, and that's what really I'm like, we need to get this out, like as much people as we can share and get them to really find out about spirit attachment and negative entities and how to protect themselves, because it's something that I've definitely noticed even back over probably the last month, 2 months, is I've seen more of this, not just with clients and things, but I've also noticed negative ET contact and other things that are starting to stir up again, and even abduction experiences starting to start up again on the very physical sense. So I did hear about CERN over in Switzerland, the Hadron Collider opening up again too. So I do wonder if this possibly has something to do with negative entities and negative ETs and things coming back in. But yeah, do you want to give us a little intro into your workshop as well, just for those that really want that in-depth knowledge and can really find that help and protection?
Yes, I'll be doing a workshop. Thank you for that. This weekend with Alexis Brooks. It's an interactive, virtual,
Oh,
and
sorry,
there's
Brooks.
actually a couple of on my website there. There's several couple of videos that have the link on there, direct link that you can grab the tickets. It's based on Earth. It's going to be about earthbound spirits and kind of how much they impact our environment, what's going on there, about I mean, somewhat about crossing them over, and just how they affect our lives, and how I think that it's really not talked about and not expressed enough in the media. You know, we've got these layers of trauma and layers of crap on this planet, and that's one of them right there. The amount of the people that do not cross over at the point of death. I'm not even talking about the demonic, the dark entities. I'm not even going that far. I'm talking about strictly the people like you and I that, you know, some of their grandma trips out and, you know, something keeps them here and they don't cross over. And then they start, you know, becoming, it's a whole nother thing going on there. And it's really, really bad right now. And, you know, and I want to throw this out. You mentioned that you're noticing an increase and in earthbound souls and negative attachments and things like that. Did it come in sync synonymously with the solar cycle? You know, the solar cycle's been very off about
Yeah.
very active about the last month or so by now, if not a little more. But ever since then, it seems like things have got really, really intense. That's when suddenly these wars are coming up, and it seems like a timeline edit, you know, to where that there's always been a timeline where nuclear war is possible on this planet. And it's been
Yeah.
averted several times, and now it's coming up again.
It is. And interestingly enough, in Vedic astrology, we've just passed through the Mars and Venus opposition, I think it was. So it's kind of, you know, the god of war and the goddess of love and peace kind of at heads with each other. So I've noticed it within relationships, I've noticed it within just male female misunderstandings, miscommunications. But it usually is a time when these kind of I guess oppositions and things happen where we do see more war and things like that. So based on astrology, but yeah, with the sun, I mean, we went through, I think it was the last, might have been solar eclipse, might have been December, I think, but the effects of that tend to blow on for the next 6 months. And I was doing a show with, I think it was just a little while back with Garrett King, who has the channel 1111 Matrix Decoded, which is amazing for gematria. And he talks about the solar activity and how, like, we've had increased solar activity, especially this year, and different, I guess, things tend to happen with that. But it's going to start to stretch out, so we're not going to start to have as much of the solar eclipses. So I do wonder if it's something like that too, but. Yeah, something with the Hadron Collider, I think, is also at play with some of this stuff. I mean, they have the god Shiva, the destroyer, at the front office of CERN.
You know, it's interesting because that is, you know, by no means it seems that CERN is not the first Hadron Collider. They used to, when I was younger, they used to call them cyclotrons, and there was one called the Cosmotron. That was active for a long time. So they've been doing that for a while, and how long they can actually make these exotic particles exist, I think that they're discovering might be the real key to what they're doing there, you know. But it was that John Teeter thing that kind of got CERN on the map, you know what I mean, in a media type of way. So it's interesting. We'll see what happens though, you know. I mean, I think that right now it's so there's you know, I just did a video actually and released it about this type of neurogenic field we come through when we hit this solar system. And this is something I was told during my contacts. You know, they're telling me they would use the planets outside of Pluto that I didn't know about to, yes, as jumping points into our solar system because they had problems with the densities and especially on this planet, problems with the microwaves and the metals in the atmosphere. And there was something else. They were saying that there was this field of energy, why I couldn't remember them fully and why my past lives are fragmented. And some of us incarnating here don't even have them at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So that's a real problem as immortal souls not having soul life memories. And what is
yeah,
it about the death process that we'll be talking a little bit about tonight? So a part of it wants our life memories. Same process. It's very
Yeah.
fast. So food for
It
thought
is.
if nothing else, right?
Even your terminology just starts that biohacking part of my brain working. To it just makes me wanna jump into, okay, well, let's look into if this is using, like, neurons and different things out of planetary, I wonder if there's something within us that we could jumpstart our own neural network to hook into, memories outside of us that are held in quantum field. I mean, when I look into black holes, what I start to feel and experience and what black holes have told me is that when we tap into a black hole, we can ask anything. That it's almost like there's information that's held from everywhere, almost like a hall of records in a way.
Well, it technically, if you look at like, I did a lot of interactions for a while with Dr. Rudy Shields
Oh,
from
yeah.
Harvard and the retired astrophysicist. He took an interest in some of my experiences, but he was the one of the foremost is on black hole research from the observatory data. And what he's saying is totally different than what we hear. When I was a kid, it was the black holes crushes everything, the movie and all that stuff. And, that's not what they are. Actually, he calls them MACOs, magnetically eternally collapsing objects. And what they are is actually inside the MACO is a mechanism that when something passes through the black hole, it actually makes a copy of it on this quantum hologram on the sorry,
Wow.
on the surface of it. Okay, so that makes actually two of them. And in a way that means that the black holes are the hard drives of the universe, of terms that they're actually the ones that are storing the information that all goes around that Mako and around what looks
Mhm.
like an impression disk. That is also the record, what we would call the records of space and time, the Akashic records.
That
Okay.
that's
And
exactly what I'm saying.
taking it a step forward, what's really cool is that you just mentioned neurons, and actually black holes are operating in the same way that brain waves do. They've got the creator makes the universes in conscious waves, or what the quantum
Mhm.
physicists are calling it. And the quantum waves occur in two ways: spherical and helical. Okay. And by the same token, our brains have something in them called microtubules. They're throughout the body, but specifically brain microtubules that make up your neurons in the mirror network. All right, which is kind of where we're going with this. And in reality, those microtubules are responding to spherical waves. So that means this direct creator consciousness type of thing going on there. Not much ways around that. So
I love
when we're
that.
dealing with a black hole, that means they're operating consciously. That's why we
Mm.
can consciously access the Akashic records. And when I started asking questions like of Dr. Shields and them, I said, well, how fast do you think the speed of thought is? He said 100,000 times the speed of light. And he quoted a couple
Wow.
of experiments. It's pretty interesting.
That
That's
is.
really cool when you start thinking about it, but that's how we would access these things. That is
Yeah.
scientific proof there. And just before I shut up, the mirror network is actually, when I'm talking to you and describing this, you're starting to see it. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? It's the same thing that the mirror mirror network of neurons is the
Yeah.
same thing what actually the quantum hologram is, and how that's a copy. So we have civilizations like you and I have interacted with. I know I have for sure. You have too, that
Yeah.
are so far ahead. When people talk about type 4, type 5 civilizations, they may no longer actually exist, but they were using space as their primary source, the Mako itself as its source, as their power source. So they're using that Mako and the divine field to communicate with us. That's why it's important that we start keeping our brains not so entrenched with abductions, grays,
Yeah.
reptilians, probes, all that stuff, which does happen, yes, but
Yeah.
it denies the positive side, the part of the contact, and those of us that are getting information from that, and that's being sequestered. And I'm hoping to see that stops by the two communities coming together a little. The SSP
Yeah.
people not being against the people with positive and yada yada, because it's not all love and light out there with these entities,
True.
no stretch, but it's not all evil either. You know what I mean? And there's
Yeah.
amount of trauma that goes along with this field when people come in, that we just talked about, that is it's surrounding with trauma. Everything that
Mm.
secret space program that these people I've interacted with that are credible, it's great trauma they talk about, and lifetime trauma that surrounds it. And that's a way to actually hamper any type of contact we're getting through the divine field. We are powerful. We start thinking of abductions and things like that. For some of us, we'll turn it into that. It's food for thought, right? I'll shut up now because
no, I'm loving it. I always love chatting with you. And it opens my mind to so much. And then it just gives me so many downloads, because every now and then you'll meet people that really kind of like spur you to stretch your thinking, stretch your mind. And I find when I chat with you, there's just so many downloads that happen and so many things that I want to try. So even like hearing you talk about the, what was it called? The Mural network.
Yeah, mirror.
Yeah, so you're talking about that, and I'm just thinking about things on a holographic level, just feeling my energy, especially like I guess more to do with the vagus nerve, the central nervous system, and I start to feel this kind of spiraling happen within my body, and I start to feel my body going into this almost like the pranic tube where all the chakras are as well. I feel my body go into this spiral, and I see that as a way to kind of like link in with the energy of what you're talking about, just as a way to kind of start to get that resonance. So there's so many things that you're just spurring me to want to try.
Something that, excuse me, I had kind of underestimated to a degree, and that is the sentient level of the craft I was on. I always do the organic, but the amount of sentience that a lot of them has. Like, for example, I've got an illustration of one of these rooms I was on. This is my second adult experience that had missing time. It's physical, you know what I mean? But then it's all fragmented after that. But nonetheless, I can still remember these things and see them and some of the beings and the technology. It's very bizarre. The whole thing is, but
it is. And I mean, you've got the beautiful Christine Dennett that's drawn illustrations and sketches of a lot of your contact experiences. So I highly encourage everyone to jump over to, we've had, I just put the link up for your Patreon. So you're over on Patreon, where I know that you share a lot more in-depth knowledge, because, we have to be careful with some of the things that we say on this platform that we're on today. But here to YouTube as well. Yeah, we have to be careful. Jean-Claude and I have experienced that firsthand. And we've got your Facebook link as well. But we probably should dive into talking about our topic for today, and we'll come back and do another show around ET contact.
Sorry, I didn't finish that thought. It's the craft itself choosing paths of most coherency through these Makos. So that's all it was. So sorry for that, but let's go back.
Oh, no, that's good. I so want to dive into. I so want to dive into your organic and inorganic craft and all of the other things that we can talk about. So what was it that led you and Alexis to talk about doing? Was there anything that really prompted going, we need to take this to the people, we need to create a workshop around this?
She called me to contact me like 7 a.m. one morning, and had some new equipment and was doing something different that she wanted to know if I'd do a quick show with her, just a quick 30-minute one. And she wanted specifically to talk about earthbound spirits. And at some point when I was maybe chatting with her and Robin McClendon or somewhere, I mentioned earthbound spirits, and she caught it and she wanted to talk about it. So we did this quick 30 minutes of a talking interview, and it just got mad responses. Really interesting, really cool, really positive, wonderful responses. Wanting more than just 30 minutes, and she wanted to put together a workshop going in depth about it. So I went ahead and did that, and we'll step forward from there. I was somewhat shocked, to be honest, but like I said, the fact to be talking about any of this still shocks me. So,
and I've seen you've got a few videos, and some that you shared with me over the years to do with the topic as well. So you do have some other areas, like it's something that you have in-depth experience and research with as well.
Yeah, I've done several, some over, and I'll make the difference on what we're talking about now, like I kind of hinted on earlier, the demonic factor and the dark entities and dark inorganic beings, as we can call them, I've done few videos on them. You know, I don't vibe on the dark thing much, so it's good
Yeah,
to be aware of it and know how to protect yourself
definitely.
against it. And some of the tactics that they use to get in on people like us that are shielded is always worthy of knowing. You know what I mean? And especially when talking about things like we're about to, the death process and crossing over, these things are very, very serious, you know?
Yeah.
So knowing some of their tactics is good, but this is, again, that's the much darker level than the earthbound spirits. People like
Mm,
grandma can cross over. That's a little bit different. And I found that in that work, for the most part, a lot of them will cross over somewhat easy because, you know, it really is the realm of lost souls. It's not a
yeah.
joke.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. Just even this topic, I only just had the thought just then. So working as a psychic and working clairvoyantly and with my cards and everything that I do, and aura drawing what I see around people. I thought you were seeing a spirit for a second, Barry, in the way that
No,
you looked.
I thought that was maybe making a hum that was making a noise. I wasn't sure, so I just turned it off.
I could hear
Sorry.
it just a little. But yeah, I've always, even when I was younger and I went and learnt mediumship and sort of tuned into that natural ability, something for me just felt off. For me, it felt like a radio station that pulled my energy down. And so for me, I rarely work with the mediumship side of things. I more work with, different more advanced ETs and ones that are on sort of like a higher or a finer frequency, because I find it just sort of pulls me down doing a bit of mediumship. But every now and then you will get like a highly advanced or kind of like a really joyful person that's passed on that seems to be more at an even match, that doesn't kind of pull you into that sleepiness. Because after, doing mediumship, I would find myself needing to go to sleep. I would find myself needing to, go have a day or two off. So I find when I work with ETs, ascended masters, and all of the other spiritual beings, that my energy sort of tends to maintain a little bit higher. Do you notice a difference, like with the two different things as well?
Yeah, very much so. You know, for the most part, it's the earthbound spirits that have not crossed over are very draining. It's like they, and they come in, and some of them, the ones that I'll be talking about in this workshop, are the ones that are entwined in our aura so much that they become part of our behavior patterns.
Mm.
And they're not detectable on the outside of people's energy field. It's a whole different deal going on. You know what I mean? And the
Yeah.
ways that influences our people's lives negatively is immense. So that's very draining. But I've noticed something else too. Once a soul does go on and cross over into the light, and then is able to sometimes come back. I've seen a lot of times they come back with an angel. So it makes them like a cherubim. There's two, and they're helping that person. I mean, one may be the angel that's been with the person a long time, but the other
Yeah.
is just that's went into the light and went to the other side and changed and evolved, and then is coming back to help. But the feeling you get from them is uplifting. It's
It
loving. It's not that draining that you feel from the earthbounds, but the
Yeah.
earthbounds are good at tricking some people, because you see someone's sick and they come and they want to help. Someone in the
Mm.
hospital, they're roaming through the hospital, but they want to help. Your energy field's going down, going dim. They want to help, and then the person winds up welcoming them, and that's a whole other thing going on. It could be subconscious, and stuff like that doesn't come out often until you're in, deep hypnosis. Anyway, food for thought.
Yeah. And I do find that it is super interesting when we have the hypnosis experiences, that so much more can come out compared to when we're just in conscious mind. And even just thinking about, the switch in brain waves that we go into, it just, when we look at the science, when we look at the facts, when we look at the EEG brainwave measurements, it's just much harder to get to those dates. I can see we've got someone on here that I need to work out how to kick off, but we'll keep going. Anyway, this brings me back to, let me just find here, protection. So let's maybe talk about protection before we go into it any further. Is there anything that you find? I myself really encourage people to do. What I would say is, sorry, Barry, I'm just trying to block this person. I'll work it out in a sec. But yeah, it's really important to surround yourself with a high frequency. And I find if we look at that, we're mainly operating 97% in quantum field and about 3% in the physical. It makes sense that we would need to use energy, frequency, sound, or color, or a mantra, or some kind of protection on a quantum level to protect us on a spiritual, mental, emotional, physical level. Other things that I find help are like frankincense is really good at just having that high vibration. Also just protect the field. So, and the other thing is frequency shifting. So if there is something that's trying to like hook in energetically or vampirically or parasite wise, I find that switching my frequency, like a radio station, also really helps to unhook and kind of go offline. Is there anything that you find that really works?
One thing, first thing is verbally tell them to leave, verbally keep them away. And these are just ways, and most of the techniques that we hear about are actually ways to focus our intent of will. So it begins at the primary source at like, if you meet somebody right now in the physical that you don't like, you're very well aware, you're very able to emit a type of frequency will either get them away or make it out, it will do something. And when you're disembodied, it's even more so. That is something that, that we will definitely feel, and it's a way to get them away. So that is actually intending them away through the focus, the intent of will. That's another thing. But, the things that will lead to that are like shielding. I like solar plexus, white light shield, golden light shielding, that it actually starts rotating and makes your aura strong. The aura is the immune system against these entities and these dead people and all of it. You know what I mean? It's important. The aura is very important to keep strong and cleared. Yeah. And one other I'll say, without going too deep, is try to release past trauma. And I've had some clients that this goes back to past life trauma that they're still carrying in the cellular structure now. You know what I mean? But that's a big problem in our society, isn't it? Well, we don't even believe it.
It's something I work with every single day.
Oh, wait, that's, but these are things that really make us more vulnerable to attachments of all type. They like to get on the organs that are harvesting and negative emotions. There's charts about how negative emotions affect different organs in the body. It's very real. And that is a way for them to start gaining control of us. And they'll do other things, when we have trapped emotion and we're people like us that are protected. It's like, kind of like, of course, I'm a Star Trek geek, but you've got the Enterprise, got like 5 or 6 Klingons or Romulans on it. They're all firing at once, wearing down the shields. But the way the Dark Ones do it is they do things like, mess up your finances, create arguments with your spouse. That's a real good one, and all these little things that will strain you to where your shields get these little cracks. When you get these little cracks, they can get in and then start manifesting negative emotions with negative thoughts. That's the way that works sometimes, especially for those of us that are shielded. And sometimes it's hard to shield yourself in the morning, shield yourself at night, every day. Sometimes you forget, you know what I mean? Anyway, but it's just food.
And I guess it's having that, because even like we're talking, I can see this beautiful golden aura around you, and I can see that you've got your shield on, and it just makes me think of Star Trek now that we're talking about, because I'm a bit of a Trekkie, not as much as you, but like I have watched it on and off over the years. But I mean, that stuff's real. The things that they talk about on the show, and some of the episodes where they've had spirit attachment and things. I mean, I know there's some of your favorite episodes that that you and I have had conversations around in the past.
When I had died myself and had my own NDE, even when I woke up and before I had what is called a clearing out, when a brain injury patient remembers everything, it comes back. Yeah. Before I'd even had that, I could still see these angelics in my mind's eye. I could feel them, and the love coming off them when I experienced them both kind of out of it and when I was remembering all the way through. It's just immense love. So much so, much more of it, I think, would have maybe burned out my body. I think they were toning it down. But something interesting when talking about Star Trek is that one thing is they were like thousands of strands of light, these corpuscle strands of light. And at the end of where these points of light were were like these, to me, they look like shields. You know what I mean? And then outside of that, it's like when you see a mirage on the road, that little the
That
steam, the
shimmery, yeah.
waves, yeah, that was outside of the shields. So that's what I saw. And these were non-corporeal light beings, angelics. I think the Uranta book calls them super nanofem. I think that's a type of archangel. That's what these were I experienced when I died.
Oh, I had that book out on my coffee table the other day.
I
I think I got it given it when I was over in the States. One of my beautiful clients gave that to me. So there's something in that book that's wanting to speak at the moment. If you've just mentioned it and I've just had it out, I need to open that up. There was another there was another question that I just had, and it was to do with someone else had a question around it as well. Oh, that's right. Just remembering someone I had a conversation with about this topic. So I've worked a little bit. I've had three opportunities to work with people that were in coma states, and they'd been in these states for a couple of weeks at this stage, or two of them had, and it was on a psychic level, sort of going in and meeting them. What I saw was kind of like this state. All I could describe it is spirit sort of talking about it being like Bardo. It was like a state between states, or kind of like a world between worlds. To me, I sort of saw this golden kind of hue, and I saw almost like a garden type seat. And it was just going and talking to the people that were in this coma state, and they seemed to be kind of lost. It's almost like looking around, not quite sure where they are, but it's like they didn't have all of the full faculties of mind quite working. It was almost like there was a distorted or like a discombobulated type feel of being part in different worlds. So when I spoke to them, it was just to remind them how much their families loved them, and that the doctors were doing all that they could to help repair the physical damage. Because one of them was, I think it was a brain aneurysm or a stroke. Another one was a really severe car accident. And so what happened, it was a couple of hours after talking to the person about how much they were loved, how much their family loved them. But it was not necessarily saying you have to come back. It's always leaving it open to free will. So the spirit always has a say. And if the body isn't too damaged and things can be repaired, this is when you find that they tend to come back in. So within a few hours, with two of these situations, the people came back into the conscious realm and actually woke up out of the comas. Do you find this sort of thing, like having your NED experience, did your family have like any communication or anything with you when you were in that state? Or did you find, was there something that you felt really pulled you out of it? Or was it just the next minute you were kind of awake?
I was in a coma for about 2 weeks, maybe a little over, a little under, but can't remember the exact day number now, but it was right around 2 weeks. And after that, it took a while for me to be able to process information again. But I could always see like these angels in my mind's eye. But as far as and afterwards and all that happened, seeing loved ones and the whole near-death experience that I had afterwards, I had to really kind of take that and kind of try to compare that to how much of that could have been my brain responding to external stimuli from my loved ones. You know what I mean? That were out here trying to want me to come back, or, things like that. So that's just kind of my personal, through the psychology side, trying to evaluate what happened. Like, I know this much, reality is real to the perceiver. And there's definitely that partial way that you had mentioned. Like when I saw my loved ones, I was at a place that they used to live, and everything was like talking to you now, except for this tree was in the wrong place. And my uncle had just passed. We just died him a couple of days. He just buried him a couple of days before my accident. And he was telling me if I had if I had another accident, I'd be with them. And my grandmother was standing there with her friend. And he was wearing this. First of all, he's kind of very strong brother, but he had this bib on with these Birkenstocks and this this hat that made him look like Huckleberry Finn type of hat. And he looked ridiculous. I said, "What's wrong with you, man? That outfit sucks, man." And he's telling me, "Man, I crossed over. You just don't remember it." And I'm saying, "What?" He goes, "You'll be here with us." And I I thought I had a body. I jumped back and I thought I was going like this. There's nothing wrong with me. There's something wrong
Wow.
with you with that outfit. He looks at the tree, he looks back at me, he says, no, he goes, you can't remember. He goes, you're not all right. They call me B. Everybody calls me B. He said, you're not all right. You're not even close to all right. You just can't remember it right now. And then he looks
Wow.
back at the tree and he says something that I can't tell you what it was, but it shocked me. And I came up at this rehab across town in what they call a fall risk bed. But that's when I had cleared out, remembered who I was. But my mother told me, she said, before she passed, she said, you say that you had this near-death experience like close before you woke up at the rehab. She said, whatever happened to you happened when they said you were conscious at the very beginning. Because when they first said you were conscious, after a couple of weeks, your eyes would just roll in the back of your eyes, in your head for a couple of seconds. You'd open your eyes and roll them. That went on for a few days, but they said you were conscious. And then when you finally start talking about my uncle and about the different colored angels I'd seen. But that's before I remember who it was. So that's just food for thought. But a lot of that is them also, and people coming and praying for me. I know they did that, helped me get through with that love frequency, the same as the frequency I think that these angelics had toned down, but they're generating to me also. All that I think is why I'm still cognizant now, and not any reason the way I should be. It was a lot of work going on there. But taking that back to love is key. And when crossing over these spirits, a lot of times, and I don't want to give away too much what I'll talk about tomorrow, but they can't perceive the light that's already there because they're either confused from running from it or confused from the shock of crossing over. And that can last for years, our time. They can't perceive the light because somehow the light's connected to the love. You start talking about love of that word nobody wants to talk about. God, the love of God, the source, creator. Everybody freaks out, man. I have no religion, so someone will say, there is no God, because if there was, I wouldn't be stuck here, and you all wouldn't be ignoring us. That's going on, but they're still so confused and still trying to live with the personality and will trying to live like we do now, and that's not happening anymore. You know what I mean? And that time, like I said, a very interesting movie is Ghost. And I go back and watch that again a few weeks ago just to see what happened to Patrick Swayze after he got in the fight in the alley, and then the dude shot him, but he took off running after the dude. He didn't know who got shot. He just took off running after the dude, got away, and he turned around and went back to Demi Moore, and she's holding his body, and then he starts going through a panoramic life review. Suddenly he's in this bed, seeing that statue, and then he's back on the street, and he hears them saying, you got to breathe. And then the light comes. And I mean, he's watching it for a minute, and even orbs start coming around him, and he starts looking back at his body and her, and he starts going, no. And he turned around and started running, and I don't know, 3-4 seconds, it went out.
Yeah.
And I've had Earthbounds describe something quite similar to that. Like one that told me, she drowned and then swam back to help her friends or resuscitating somebody. She drowned. She fell off a raft, drunk, asleep. Wow. And then come back to try to help her friends resuscitate somebody. And it was her. And it shocked her. Then she sees the light. And hey, I've been cheated. It's not my time. I'm like, 20 years old. It's not my time. And so she ran into the field. That's what she told me. I ran to the field and it finally went away. But then I never saw it again.
Wow.
And then they're moving around trying to join with somebody, so they can feel through the emotions again, especially if they're an addict. The addict always wants that last fix, and they're leaving through living people to get it, through behaviors, influencing their behaviors to get tore down and go to that party,
Yeah. And they literally will feed and hook in to the living person to try and, get that neural network hijack to try and get the energetic hits from them. But you'll see it sometimes. So, as a clairvoyant, I see spirit attachment almost like a cloud, and it will usually be hooked into near gates of consciousness, acupuncture point, which is gallbladder 20. It's at the back of the atlas head region, sort of either side of the ropey neck muscle where it joins to the skull. And I'll quite often see like a little shadow, a little cloud. Sometimes if it is the darker one, it may even have tones of sort of like a reddish brown color, or even like a deep kind of like musty purple color with it too. So you can have some that are quite manipulative on the emotional level, that tend to seed in doubt, or they'll find someone's weakness and try and like muster up anger, try and muster up anything energetically like loose that they could feed off. So they really get off on causing drama, causing fights. And sometimes it might just be on planting like mental seeds or creating chaos, and they tend to feed off that. Can we talk maybe like a little bit about the I guess like with the entity side of things and how they can feed off energy, and the difference between the spirit side that was earthbound or is earthbound compared to perhaps like other different types of attachment, or parasitic type attachments?
Well, I'll tell you what. Excuse me. I had actually just told a story the other day that was connected to when I was trying to. I was much younger, you know, my late teens or early teens. I was trying to mid-teens. I was trying to have the OBE, and I couldn't just have this OBE the way some people say, just jump out of your body. I was meditating hard, but I couldn't do that. So I was doing all these different techniques trying to do that. And what it did, though, some of these techniques augmented the way I was already seeing. You know, I was thinking maybe I wasn't seeing psychically because I was seeing energy fields around people way outside of them, and like a white kind of color, and it wasn't ever these super rainbow colors that I saw in the book. So I must not be seeing, right? No, we don't all see like that, you know. So that's the thing.
It's
So
all
yeah. Anyway, augmented the way that I'm seeing, and I started perceiving the shadows more. And the shadows, I saw two chiefly, but actually three. But one of them were small spherical ones. The others were more oval, and the others looked oval, but they're more like these teardrops. They tend to bounce a little bit more. I think the Toltecs called them bouncers or the flyers. What I witnessed one night in connection with what you're saying is, I worked this bowling alley back then, and all the employees could bowl when the alley was closed after close. And one of the bartenders was bowling down there, and I see one of these shadows go by, and these shadows, what people need to understand is that actually our peripheral sight is in black and white. And that's why it's so much easier to catch entities in peripheral sometimes. I saw one dart by, and it's one of the bigger ones, an oval. I'm able to trace it enough to where I see it go right down and jump on this woman, okay? She's bowling. Wow. You see it attaches actually just a little higher than the place you were talking about. And by the way, that's one of the places I took a hematoma anyway.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but it attached about where the crown chakra is, and then elongated down to about the root chakra. That's the black shadow, and it starts pulsating, turning like a weird gray color. And I mean, she starts bowling just really hard. She's about to get what they call a turkey. She's getting strikes and pow. So I went down to say, hey, you know, are you all right? And I remember saying, well, you know, Barry, the stinking thinking is just getting to me. And she was about to undergo a divorce. It was impending. It was going to become, you know, so that's the thing. But I knew immediately this thing was giving her negative thoughts, flaring up her emotions so it could feed. I mean, it was enough to where I was saying, oh, Creator, please, I don't want to see the shadows no more. You know what I mean?
Yep, I know what you mean, especially from being a seer since I was a kid. You know, and it is hard. And I think that's something important too, is to be able to kind of shut those faculties down when we don't want to see, or at least put up the protection. You know, putting up the protection is a must in regards to this, but it is to notice, I think, and be that guardian on the threshold of your own conscious mind. You know, excuse me, it's like when we have darker or negative emotions come in, first, is it our thought? And then we're also up against this voice of God technology too, which feels very different to your own independent thought. So there's a couple of things that we need to be mentally aware of. But it is interesting sometimes when you're watching someone with an entity attached, and you can see them feeding into it, or you can see them feeding into their own inadequacies. It's quite interesting, but you're right, it definitely is through peripheral, because we have cones and rods that connect to our auric vision, and it's the peripheral part of our eyes that pick up on this. So the more that you're aware of it, the more that your brain's going to fire together in that way to start taking that in as vital information.
Yeah, it's and then you've got the others that attack while we're sleeping, and these multitude of beings here that are trying to stop people from crossing over, that are attacking people, feeding on awareness and luminosity. Something about they don't have their own luminosity, so they're trying to take ours and our awareness, and that's part of the death process. The death process takes our life memories for whatever reason, you know. It's really, I mean, it's negative to the point of where, because I know that most people don't want to think that we have a natural predator like that as humanity, but we do, big time.
Yeah.
I mean, predator right here on this plane that people are unaware of. You know, I would see those shadows start grouping sometimes. I see one of them fleeting, and I can see like a few of them hovering, like they're plotting or something. And then eventually I'd seen the Hat Man, and then at that point I started really changing. No more. So enough of that, you know, because I think once you keep those thoughts going, the easier it is for them to manifest. We're dealing with beings of manifestation, you know, like I believe in some ways some forms of Sasquatch are too. I think they don't manifest until there are people around.
Oh, you just reminded me. So I've got, at the moment, this code I've got for a 2-hour booking session with me is the Yowie code. So you just reminded me. So for anyone wanting to book a 2-hour session, you'll save $30 on a session at the moment if you use the code word Yowie.
So when you talk about the Yowie, do you cry at the exact same part of the story every time? No, I'm just kidding. You know what I'm talking about anyway.
I was thinking of you the other day with the, was it the Reese peanut butter cups or peanut butter bars? You were like leaving them out for, I was thinking of that the other day, because where I live, we actually have some Yowie activity not far from here. So you can see we've got a beautiful environment in the background. So, you know, it's quite popular for Bigfoot, Sasquatch, but that's a whole nother show.
I'll tell you what, in 2019, I was at that location and I started putting up setups of apples, green apples and red apples, along with stones, like were left for me, stones and pineapples or pine cones. And I'll tell you, I've got 2 videos, and they started messing with me back there. It wasn't a person, and I couldn't figure out how in the world they were getting past the people, past me. And by the same token, watching the robins come out and eat these red apples only. So they were messing with me and moving the green ones. Found a footprint here. It was. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. And I've got pictures. First time I went there in 3 years, 3 times. I had a phone camera finally. I had a phone, but the camera worked. So I was moving around this camera, that yurt, taking all these pictures, trying to get that Peter Parker shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I maybe kept probably 4 or 5 out of 20, but I posted them in a video, and this lady from London starts contacting me saying, how tall was that yurt? I was like, probably about, 10, 12 feet. And she said, well, you were being watched. And she starts sending things, and this isn't pareidolia, and she starts circling things, and she sends me my own pictures back to me, and I can see this thing watching me. And it looks like it's above the yurt. It's standing against a tree, holding it, and you can see it looks like it's phased out like a predator. I had just done a thing about Sasquatch.
I've seen it like that.
And I said, well, it made sense. It was watching me the whole time. I was right by it, and it was several pictures. I couldn't believe it. It's one thing to talk about the invisibility, to talk about they might have chlorophyll and all these other, but when that stuff happens to you, it blows you away. And I feel brand new every time. And maybe that's what I think is the Christian Bible that says you have to be as of children to get into the kingdom of heaven. I think that's what it means. You've got to still be somewhat.
I think so.
Anyway, sorry,
Definitely.
we're here to talk about Sasquatch here. Sorry.
Let's do another show. But I just did a shout out the other week. I did and a show with Sarah Bignell, and she has Yowie Central Radio. And I said, you've got to interview Barry Littleton. So hopefully you'll be hearing from her shortly as well. She's a beautiful Aussie girl, and yeah, just records people's experiences with Yowie, Sasquatch, Yeti, and Bigfoot from all over the world, but a lot of really cool stories coming out of Australia. Oh,
Yeah.
and we just, yeah, Karen's just said validation as well. So it sounds like that's what you got for leaving out the green apples, was that validation. So we're sort of coming towards the top of the hour. I did see someone ask about Karen asked about how to cleanse and protect. And I think someone else did as well. So we talked a little bit before, just quickly touching on frequency being one of the big things that you can do to protect. And I know that there's, you can go to a couple of magic shops, things like that. Even yesterday, just knowing that we were doing this topic, I went and got some black salt, which is meant to be really highly protective. I've got my frankincense, and I've got my little tuning forks and things like this on hand, as well as I've got 3 different essences that protect. We've got elm bark flower essence, hornbeam, and centurion. And I think holly is actually quite good as well when we look at the holly leaf in terms of that little spiky leaf shape. So there's a couple of different tools and things. And I know that the forms of protection you'll probably be talking about with Alexis will be different in the workshop. Is there anything that that you want to talk about in terms of like spirit attachment, or like the negative entities, or parasites, or anything that you feel is really important to talk about today?
Quickly, one would be just be aware if you're having things like lack of energy, anger flashes, things you didn't have and it seems to come out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Arguments beginning to a new location. Land is a big one. The things that come out of land and are attached to houses and property itself, not just from now, but from, generations of time. That can actually, it's good to always kind of cleanse your house and try to keep it protected as well. And for me, I'd say definitely use the verbal of telling them to leave, and also that white light golden light technique of using the solar plexus to reinforce the aura. That is very important. And also focusing and pushing things out, as far as energetically getting it out. That's very important. There's a wise old actually what I use when I talk about considering regressions and past life memories, or just memories in this life and trauma, and releasing it. Sometimes people in the psyche will bury that, but that's like a thorn in the flesh. And, as long as it's in there, it's constantly causing irritation, inflammation, and a bunch of other things. Once the thorn is removed, okay, the healing immediately starts and begins. Even though the thorn is still there, you may heal up, the thorn is there, it's still somewhat painful. It was a bad experience, but it's not affecting you and in the flesh like it was before. It's a whole different thing. So try to remove those traumas, whether they're this life, a life that you had a previous life. It's important. That will stop extra attachments from coming. And try to, not too much alcohol and drugs is another way to leave your aura weak enough for them to come in. And
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Hate,
And then
the emotions.
Yeah. I think, really protecting yourself as much as what you can do on terms of like, diet and our thoughts, so that we're not attracting any negative or dark thought forms, is 2 different layers of protection. But definitely what you said about clearing things from past lives, it's coming up really strong at the moment, because we're kind of going from that 3D into 4 and 5D. What I'm finding is a lot of our starseeds and ET contactees and people that are sort of more awake to that vibrational shift that we're going through, we're also kind of eliminating whether it's boundary setting and other different human things that we perhaps have also come here to experience, is just as much about being the human in this experience in the here and now. So anything that we need to learn or kind of like cleanse to help shift us into the higher realm is more the human earth stuff rather than, ET stuff. But I am finding a lot of contracts, agreements, oaths that were made in the persecution time. So whether it was people being seers or healers or herbalists, I'm seeing a lot of stuff come up to do with them letting go of contracts, agreements, oaths, or even emotions that were charged in those times. And even with some people that are wanting to meet, soulmate or someone that they can connect with, I'm finding that there's a lot of oaths and things that they may have taken in past lives that prevented them from finding love again. So we'll get in a past life situation where someone's like swearing that they'll never use their gifts again, or having a loved one die and swearing that they'll never love again. And I'm finding that they're holding these in that quantum field, whether it's within the chakras, whether it's within this neural network that's sort of connected energetically to those experiences. I kind of think about it as a multidimensional soul. So we're trying to clear the trauma in the other lifetimes to have more available energy in the here and now. So it's a little bit of a different kind of clearing, but I think it still ties in with what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree. Definitely. It's a matter of, kind of, like I said, well, there's just, I don't know what to say, there's just so much trauma down here for everyone that it's amazing. But not just that, our parents can also give us this trauma too. They're storing it in their organs and they transfer it to us. It's that serious. So sometimes we can have generational curses, generational attachments, and that has to be dealt with. Generational trauma that has to be released. All these things that really affect on who we are and the quote unquote totality of ourselves,
And I think that you've just prompted me to remember about, entity attachment to do with furniture and different things as well. So we also see that. And I've got a really good question from Sophia. She said, Barry, can we visually remove our partner's entities, or do we have to have their permission first? I think that's a great question.
Permission, I would talk it over with them, let them know first they need to realize that they might have an attachment and come to deal with that. They're probably going to be resistant, but they need to try to actually go within, go down to those lower levels of consciousness, like, at least alpha, and try to, actually identify if they have an attachment and then start talking to it and ask it to leave. A lot of what I do is not just always forcing them out. There's different types of therapy. One is like a gestalt where you slamming somebody, but there are other things that's more cognitive behavioral. That's what I've dealt with clients professionally all my career. Is what I dealt with. So it's the same thing that works even better with disincarnate people, earthbound spirits. Same thing, because something about, no matter what anybody says, something about the personality survives.
Yeah. And I think that, even there was that doctor, the surgeon, who, hooked up to the EEG monitor, didn't have brainwaves that were conducive with being, cognizant. I think the part of his brain that was affected, he wasn't able to have, I guess, a conscious experience or thought. So I think it was pretty much like flatlining on a brain level. Yet he was able to come back after they thought that was impossible, to describe what was happening around him in the situation, talk about life kind of, I guess, in these other realms. And I think that there's so much more that's not perhaps held within this computer. Even if we look at this as the biocomputer, the physical kind of organic computer, or even if we talk about cloud technology and things like that, we have words now to kind of describe how this might be holographic to what we experience on a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual level.
One of the things to answer her question too also is I've been able to have actually another medium assist a person that is infected in getting rid of something. You know what I mean? Or identifying it. So that can be done in that way too. But it always seems to work best when the person is aware of it and they're able to get rid of this himself, because it's going to be something that's, in the case where I'm dealing with, on the inside of the energy field, they're entwined in the personality. So it's not something on the outside that, like a spirit on the outside, it may be wanting something, it's attached to the person, but you can still perceive it. You can get survival evidence or whatever from it when you start communicating with it. It's not the same. These things are hidden. These on the internet, it's hidden. You don't know they're there, and then suddenly they jump out at you. Somebody like a woman starts talking like a man all of a sudden, or vice versa. Guys start talking like a woman all of a sudden. It's things like that. It's like, do you hear voices too? And things to think about. These are signs of possession of various types.
I have heard about it being generational, where there'll be, people in lineages that have heard negative entities or voices come and talk to them, and I've seen that passed down generationally. One thing that I find as well is in the hypnotic, state, it is easier to remove or to identify these types of things. I myself have also done crystal dreaming training and practitioner, which is more of like a shamanic practice. But essentially, you've got 1.5 meters of quartz crystals that are aimed at opening up the pineal gland. So your client is in a waking state and you're guiding them through a process, but usually you're asking them to identify or to ask the negative spirit or attachment to step forth to break these soul contracts or agreements. You're basically casting them out. But the interesting thing is sometimes when some of these entities leave, and sometimes they're held in with deep grief. That's the other thing, is that when we have someone pass, sometimes there is a sense of deep grief, and it's holding that emotion in, creates if we think about it being like an umbilical cord type attachment to the person, where other people that are earthbound spirits that are still grieving can come in and attach. But what I found sometimes is that some people will actually vomit up this bile-like fluoro green. It's not kind of like a normal earthly vomit. So this stuff does really infiltrate. If we're talking about ectoplasm, and we're talking about sort of like supernatural substances that can come into the physical world, we do see this actually leave the body. Have you noticed any of that kind of like fluoro vomiting or anything like that when you've done any entity removal or anything, or has there been shifts and changes?
I've seen that most in haunted houses.
Yeah.
And that's something that both earthbound spirits and more demonic, negative, organic beings will do too. Is they mess with the plumbing of a house, a haunted house, and in a lot of times in the sinks is this black gook looking stuff, greenish gook stuff. And you can say it's just sink stuff, of course, but it looks eerie. You know what I mean? And you token on some of those houses that are really haunted, you've got that very weird, it almost seems like an ashy substance on the walls. It's very faint, but I mean something like a soot or something. That's
Like
that ectoplasm, I'm sure of it. I think it's also connected to what is called DOR, deadly orgone radiation. And that is something that, like when I used to mess with those cloud busters as a kid, when I started busting nimbus cloud, thunder clouds, I started not feeling that good. But it turns out I wasn't grounding the water source good enough, and it was DOR collecting inside the machine, and you've got entities that are feeding on it. You know what I mean? And by the same token, it's making me not feel good too. That DOR, that's something that we don't hear about. We hear all the people talking about orgone all the time and making their cool pyramids, which is cool, but they never talk about DOR. That's real weird. I think you just throw a little Sugnite in there and it's done. No, not exactly. It's something just to be aware of. But I think that ties in to this type of ectoplasm we're talking about. When something like angel hair goes through that process, because angel hair I think is connected to that also, and that be seen floating through the sky a lot of times. I used to see that when I was younger, like angel hair. I didn't know what it was. I thought, is that cotton or what is it? Yeah.
Well, sometimes we'll get that. It seems to be more like when we had it a few years ago. It was around like chemtrailing and things. There would also be like this fine angel hair type substance. It was really interesting because you could literally see it floating over you, or you could feel it.
Yeah. It's very interesting because things like that starts taking us also into like, kind of what those chemtrails are and some of those things that are a similar type of substance, and some of the reports I had seen that showing some of the things they had on them, like virus wise and like cryptosporidium and stuff like that that was found in these chemtrails. It's like, whoa, you know what I mean? It's like taking that and maybe that process to something else. See, somebody made a comment, black soot over everything. Well, I bet you must live in a very active house. Probably a couple portals.
That's an Australian. I wonder if it's also to do with the, slightly demonic things that have been going on here the last, not just 2 years, but I guess we're finding out more about them over the last 2 years. So, it looks like an Aussie flag that we've got there.
Would that be Sydney or Melbourne? No, I'm just kidding.
Really both. Oh my gosh, there's so much darkness under the cities and things. Well, we've come to the top of the hour. It's been such an interesting chat with you. Where can people find out more and really get like the deeper tools and techniques? We've talked about a couple of things that can help, but I know that people will still be wanting to find out more on what they can do, like sort of a step-to-step system. So can you share a little bit about you and Alexis and what's happening?
Sure. My YouTube channel is a great place to go. Barry Littleton on YouTube. I've got the 2 newest videos on there are actually connected promotional videos, so you can actually look in the comments. It'll take you directly to the link. And you know what this is spirit release therapy, is what it's been termed a lot in casework. That is, so it's dealing with that, and that's a good place to go if you want to hear more about this. Is the workshop? It'll be done Saturday afternoon, this Saturday. So I encourage everybody to come over. My YouTube channel, if you go under playlist, Negative Inorganic Beings has got a lot of stuff on it concerning what we talked about tonight also. And I've done several videos over earthbound spirits on there as well. So they're good reference points.
And I love it that you've got it in a playlist. I was checking it out the last few days. And yeah, it's really informative, but I do encourage people to go. Nadia's just asked about who is Alexis. It's Alexis Brooks, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, Alexis Brooks, and it's a Higher Journey Academy. And if you go on YouTube, type in Alexis Brooks Higher Journeys, her whole thing will come up on YouTube.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you to everyone else in Australia who got up early to have listened to our show, or perhaps you're on your way to work. But yeah, Barry, it's just so good to catch up and talk with you. And I look forward to maybe chatting some more about ETs and different topics, Bigfoot, Yowie experiences.
Yeah, I hope I didn't take you too far off topic and people don't start throwing carrots at me or something like the Apollo. So I apologize for that. But sometimes it's so easy to talk to you. I just get sorry.
Me too. I always feel like, it's like there's so many different shoot-off conversations that we could have around this. But yeah, just sending you all lots of love and have a beautiful day. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Sol. Take care.
You too. Bye, everyone.